Today, I'm going to be doing a video that I have been planning on doing for a while now, and it is to finally revisit the best and worst spells in Fable, which I did a couple years ago now at this point. I decided that instead of making a best and worst spells list, that I would make a tier list for the spells instead. So today I bring to you the Fable Anniversary / Fable Lost Chapters spell tier list. Also real quick, I know this is a bit of a longer video, but this video took a long time to make and a lot of effort went into it, so if you guys could show me some love by slapping that like button and hitting subscribe, it would be greatly appreciated, and it will help encourage me to produce more videos of this caliber in the future. Without further ado, let's get started with the list. And the first category of spells, of course, is attack spells. Attack spells, as the name implies, are mainly used to deal damage. They are attack spells. Now the first spell on the list, Inflame. Now Inflame is actually a pretty good spell that I didn't really give that much credit when I first made these videos. Inflame actually happens to be a really good crowd control spell, as well as just like an overall damage dealer. It does a maximum of 500 damage when you have it maxed out, so it's actually a pretty high hitter when compared to like even the highest damage weapons and other, similar spells. But the main difference between Inflame and Force Push, other than the added damage and, the flame part, is the fact that Inflame will not damage friendly people unless you lock onto them. So if you have a crowd of enemies around you, but you also have like some traders or some villagers that you're trying to protect, Flame will not damage any of your allies in combat. It will only damage your enemies, unless of course you lock onto them specifically. So Inflame, I am going to be putting in tier A because it is definitely one of the better spells, but I wouldn't consider it S tier. It's not like one of the best spells that I would like use every time I play the game. You know what I mean? So that gets the rank of A here. Next on the list we have Fireball, which is a pretty self-explanatory one. It creates a ball of fire in the palm of the caster's hand, which can be sent hurtling towards a target when released. Higher levels of the spell can charge the fireball into a bigger, more explosive ball. Now Fireball isn't the worst spell in the world. It's alright. I mean, it does a decent bit of damage at the end of the day. The level 4 version of the spell, when you charge it up all the way, does a maximum damage of 700. For comparison, this is double level 3, which caps out at 350, and each level of the spell needs to be charged individually, so even if you're a level 4, you can do quick shots with the fireball to do quick succession, 80 damage hits. The most effective way to use it, in my opinion, is to charge it all the way and just go for max damage. Again, it's not the best spell in the world. It's a fairly good damaging spell. If you are dealing with a crowd of enemies, you will quickly find yourself overwhelmed, and that's why I throw it here in B. It's middle ground. Next on the list we have Battle Charge. Battle Charge propels the caster forward at a great speed, smashing into anything in its path and blasting all nearby aside. Higher levels can travel greater distances and deal greater damage. Now, I never really liked Battle Charge. I'm pretty sure I listed it as one of the worst spells in the original video, and that's kind of for a reason. It's pretty fucking pointless of a spell, in my opinion. Now, at the max level, it does a mere 500 damage, which, I mean, it doesn't seem that low when you compare it to Inflame, but when you compare it to the attack style of Inflame, which is quick bursts that surround you with, 500 damage and can attack multiple enemies at a time, Battle Charge is just, it's a little bit underwhelming. It's essentially Assassin Rush, but it does damage, and you can damage multiple enemies at a time. It's just, in my opinion, it's such an unwieldy spell that pretty much any other spell would work in its place. Like, if you're going to use Battle Charge, you might as well just use Inflame. This one I'm going to throw on C here because it's really not that good of a spell. Again, it's not the worst spell in the world. It's pretty bad. Next on the list here is Multi-Strike. Multi-Strike imbues the user's blade with the ability to strike multiple times with a single blow. Higher levels allow for more blows. This one is also pretty self-explanatory. When you activate Multi-Strike, it makes it so that whenever you strike somebody with your sword, it strikes them multiple times. Now, at its highest level, one strike will account for 5 total strikes, which is pretty insane. But it's actually a really, really useful spell, as it allows you to kill enemies in one hit that you normally would not be able to kill in one hit. And this is also the first spell that I will be combining with another spell, which is Berserk. Because in my opinion, these two spells go hand in hand. You can definitely use Multi-Strike on its own, but the way Multi-Strike really shines is with Berserk. Because with Berserk and Multi-Strike, you can kill every single enemy in the game with one strike. I use one strike a little bit non-literally there, because obviously multi-strike turns one strike into 5 strikes, but the main point is that the added benefit of the strength from Berserk, as well as the multiple strikes from multi-strike, allows you to deal just insane amounts of damage that you would not be able to deal before, which makes things such as summoners or minions able to be killed in one blow. But anyways, multi-strike has always been one of my favorite spells, and probably one of my most used spells, although I have to say it's not necessarily on the top of my list of most used spells, which is why I put it in the A tier list. It's pretty damn good, but it's not one of the best spells. It's definitely really fucking good, don't get me wrong, but it's just, I find myself using other spells more often, that's all. Of course, we'll kind of touch back on the Berserk a little bit, but Berserk goes there too, just because the two spells go hand in hand. So next on the list is Divine Fury and Infernal Wrath. Divine Fury channels the white hot fury of the gods into concentrated beams that hit within a certain radius. Higher levels increase the damage dealt, while Infernal Wrath is a dark spell that calls forth vortices of energy from the nether realms. A portal opens beneath each victim, draining their life into the underworld. Higher levels increase the damage inflicted. Now, if you couldn't tell, these are essentially the same exact spell. One is the good version, one is the bad version. You just kind of cast a spell, and it gives you this big ring of fury or wrath around you, which damages any enemies in the vicinity. So not only will it damage any enemies that fall within your ring of fire or ring of white hot fury, but it will also damage any enemies within a certain range of the ring. So you will notice that even enemies that are slightly outside of the ring still get hit by your fury or your wrath. Now at their highest levels, they do a total of 1000 damage per enemy, and it deals the damage in a rapid sequence of 20s. And this is per enemy. So if you have 10 enemies in the ring, you're doing 10,000 damage. Now this spell is useful for multiple reasons. It's not only just really good for crowd control in general, but it's also actually pretty good for boss fights and other stronger enemies, as it does have the ability to cancel certain animation frames and attack frames. A good example of this would be the trolls, where they throw their rocks and do their ground pound. If you do Infernal Wrath, it locks them up in a way where they can't actually perform any attacks. And this is actually a method that I've used multiple times in some of my playthroughs to defeat Arachnox at the arena. The Kraken, as well as even Jack of Blades, is not immune to the animation cancellation of Divine Fury and Infernal Wrath. Not only is it just a really good spell in general, but it's actually quite a broken spell when it comes to how it interacts with enemies and their animation and attack frames and such. So with all of that reasoning combined, I put this spell in S tier as the first S tier spell because it's just that good of a spell. If I'm ever doing a magic build playthrough or any sort of magic build on my character, I will always find myself with Divine Fury or Infernal Wrath, and when I do find myself with either of those spells, I use them all the fucking time because they are that good and they are so broken that it just, why wouldn't you use them, you know? And with that, that wraps up the attack spells, and we move on to the physical spells. Physical spells mainly affect the hero only by enhancing his strength or abilities. Some of these spells can only be mastered by an evil or a good hero, which is another point that I wanted to bring up about these physical spells. So you may have noticed that the attack spells, even though there are some good and bad versions, such as the Divine Fury and the Infernal Wrath, you can max out any of these spells regardless of your alignment towards good or evil. With physical spells, there are spells that you cannot maximize unless you are good or evil, depending on the spell. So to start things off, we have Physical Shield, which in my opinion is the best spell in the entire game. I'm just going to put that out there right now. It is the best spell in the entire game. I don't even need to hesitate to put this in S tier, and I will explain why. This spell is completely fucking broken. So essentially, Physical Shield surrounds the caster with a protective sphere of energy that will absorb all damage at the expense of will until the caster has no will remaining. Higher levels allow for absorption of more damage. Now, that sounds pretty straightforward. It essentially switches your health bar with your magic bar. So anytime you take physical damage, instead of being damaged to your health, you are damaged to your willpower, which has its good and bads. If you're getting attacked by a lot of stuff, you will be low on will a lot, which may affect your ability to cast other spells, but with enough potions, that's not as big of a problem as it would seem. The main caveat with Physical Shield is the fact that not only does it block all damage, but it blocks all damage frames. And what I mean by that is you cannot be knocked down by any attacks that would normally knock you down or stagger you or anything like that. You do not have to worry about blocking, you do not have to worry about rolling, and you do not have to worry about certain boss attacks that would normally knock you over. Again, perfect example of this would be trolls when they do their ground pound or throw rocks. You are completely invincible to all of this. On top of all of this, Physical Shield will protect you from losing any of your combat multiplier levels, which is extremely useful for trying to gain experience or just, trying to open up the combat multiplier demon door or whatever reason you're trying to get combat multiplier up. Physical Shield will help you greatly with this, as it makes it impossible for your combat multiplier to decrease whenever you get hit. With Physical Shield, as long as you have enough potions, you can drip feed yourself will potions and you are essentially invincible for the entire game. And because it is such a useful and broken spell, it deserves S tier. The one caveat of it though is that only good heroes can master this spell. However, that's not as big of an issue as you would think it is because, well, even at level 3, it's a really, really overpowered spell. Even at level 1, it's pretty overpowered. You only really need one level of Physical Shield to be invincible. It's just a little bit more effective the higher your level is. And next on the list is Berserk, which we already kind of covered, but I wanted to kind of touch back on. Berserk sends the caster into a hulking frenzy, increasing speed and strength while conversely decreasing reason and civilized manners. Higher levels allow for the caster to become even more powerful and to remain in this state for longer. Berserk was one of those spells that I originally put onto the worst list because I just had all sorts of problems with it that I didn't like. Mainly the fact that it staggers your enemy every single time you attack them. Now the reason why this matters is because without multi-strike, Berserk does a lot of damage, but it just barely doesn't do enough damage to kill some of the stronger enemies in a single hit. And the reason this becomes a problem is because you hit them once, they get knocked over, you have to wait for their animation frame to end because you cannot attack an enemy while they're on the ground. They will not receive damage, which means that you have to wait for them to not only fall over, but to get back up and become attackable again before you can attack them again and finally kill them. Now, this isn't the case for all enemies, of course. I do often find that it's faster to kill some enemies without Berserk because you can just successively hit them with 2 or 3 attacks a lot faster than you can Berserk hit them with 1 attack, wait for them to get up, and then Berserk hit them again. It's just easier and faster and simpler to use a normal attack unless, like I mentioned earlier, you use multi-strike, which throws all of that out the window and turns Berserk into one of the most overpowered spells in the game, which is why I took it from one of the worst spells to being an A tier spell with multi-strike. To maximize Berserk, you do need to be evil, so you will only be able to reach 3 Berserk unless you are a certain level of evilness. But nonetheless, it is still an extremely powerful spell, and you can still do the one-hitter quitters even with level 3, as long as you got your multi-strike. Next on the list is Assassin Rush. Assassin Rush propels the caster through space in the blink of an eye. If a victim is targeted, the spell enables the caster to move behind this unfortunate instantaneously. Higher levels propel the caster even further. Now again, this is going to be one of those spells that is a combination spell. I think Assassin Rush probably ended up on the worst spell list. I can't quite remember. But Assassin Rush on its own, in my opinion, is a pretty useless spell. I think some people use it to get around quickly. I find it kind of awkward and unwieldy for that, so I just don't even use it for anything really, except in combination with Summon, because it happens to be the perfect combination of spells for glitching the game and breaking it in ways that were unimaginable before I found out this combination of spells. But essentially the way it works is with certain summons, you can place the summon in a way where it ends up between doors or whatever, and if you Assassin Rush towards your summon, it will actually, if you get it right and the angle right and the timing right, it will glitch you through walls, through floors, through doors, and it will allow you to access areas of the game early and items in the game such as the Sword of Aeons early, any time in the game really. So you can fresh out of the guild, purchase your Assassin Rush and your summon, and then you can just go straight to the Chamber of Fate and get your Sword of Aeons from underneath the floor, which I've shown in multiple videos, multiple ways of abusing the Assassin Rush and Summon glitch to get all sorts of cool places. Despite the fact that it started out as a worst spell, it now ends up in the S tier, just because it is such a brokenly useful glitch spell. It's kind of ironic because on its own, I find it to be a completely useless spell, but it happens to end up in S tier just because I use it so often, just because it's so broken for things such as, you know, glitching into doors, that sort of thing. So anyways, Assassin Rush as well as Summon both end up in S tier for the reasons of glitching and game breaking. Next on the list is Heal Life. Heal Life allows the caster to trade in magical energy for health. Health can also be passed to non-hostile entities in the vicinity. Higher levels provide more health with each use. Only good heroes can master this spell, so unless you are extremely virtuous, you will only be able to get up to level 3 with this spell. Now, Heal Life, again, is another spell that started off in the worst list of spells, but it gained a little bit of redemption when I discovered that you can use it to heal your friendlies, your allies. So this spell really shines most during escort missions, and also when you're trying to do any sort of boast playthrough where, you know, you might not be at your tip-top fighting conditions. You know, maybe you're doing without a scratch, or you're doing fist fighter, and, you know, you might not be able to protect the people that you're trying to protect as well, or maybe you're using some bodyguards to help you fight and they're, you know, pretty close to dying. You know, you cast Heal Life on them, all of a sudden they're not dying. You know, it becomes a completely necessary spell for certain gameplay methods. So anyways, this one ends up in B tier because, you know, it's middle of the ground. It's a good spell. I wouldn't call it a bad spell anymore, but again, it's not one of those spells that I use very often, just because, well, you know, in terms of healing myself, potions are a lot easier, and if you're going to be using your mana to recover your health, you might as well just be using physical shield. So in my opinion, the only reason Heal Life is useful is for its ability to heal, you know, your friendlies, your allies. Alright, next on the list is Ghost Sword. Ghost Sword summons an ethereal blade from the netherworld to do battle on behalf of the caster. Multiple levels increase the power and number of swords summoned. Now, Ghost Swords, I cannot quite remember where it ended up on the list the first time, but I personally find it to be a bit of a middle of the ground spell these days. That's just mostly because, you know, it's not the best spell, but it's definitely not a bad spell, and it's definitely not the worst spell. It's about as useful as Summon, on its own, of course. If not maybe a little bit more useful than, you know, your summoned creature would be in a fight. And that's because you get 4 swords to fight with you. And these are really, really good for crowd control for, you know, lower to medium level enemies, or even some higher level enemies, to be completely honest, as long as you're not completely overwhelmed by them. But it's nice to have something out there fighting with you, alongside you. It's one of those nice passive attack spells. You can just kind of like cast it and forget about it. And unlike Summon, where it's on a timer and it'll just disappear after the timer's up, I believe Ghost Swords only really disappear after they've been defeated by an enemy. So after an enemy, you know, deals enough damage to a Ghost Sword, it will disappear. But other than that, they seem to just kind of follow you around indefinitely. I mean, they might have a timer that's set really, really long, but for the most part, it just kind of seems like they stick around until they're killed. And if not, then, you know, the enemies are probably all gone by the time it despawns anyway. Not really a spell to write home about, but it's kind of useful, so I give it the B tier. It's pretty decent. So next on the list is Multi-Arrow. Once this spell is cast, each arrow fired is magically transformed into a multitude of lethal projectiles, causing much greater damage. Higher levels generate even more arrows. One can keep track of the number of shots the hero has left using Multi-Arrow by counting the number of light nodes swirling around them. And at its maximum level, you get 6 shots fired per projectile. And it will last up to 4 shots from the arrow for a total of 24 projectiles shot from 4 shots, which is a pretty good combination. And if you haven't noticed, this is essentially just multi-strike, but for the bow. And for that reason, it's going to end up right next to multi-strike on the A list. It is actually a really useful spell, particularly for boss fights, especially things like Jack of Blades, where, you know, he hovers up in the middle of the air and projectiles are pretty much the only way to attack him. Multi-Arrow is really good for this, because when you combine it with the strongest bow in the game, it is just absolutely lethal. There is pretty much nothing you can't kill with Multi-Arrow and Skorm's bow. Again, they're good spells. They're just, I wouldn't consider them the best spells, even though they are like quite necessary spells. But anyways, Multi-Arrow, A tier. It's a pretty good spell. Right, and with that, we move on to surround spells. Surround spells are spells that do not affect the hero, but things around him, like making time slower or turning any enemy into an ally. Much like physical spells, there are some spells that you can only master if you are good or evil, and the first spell on the list is Force Push. Now, this one might surprise you guys, but Force Push, I'm putting that bad boy in S tier. Now I don't remember where Force Push lied in my original list of spells. I can't remember if that was a best or worst spell. I can't imagine that I would have made it a worst spell. But the reason why I put it in S tier is because of just how broken this spell is. Force Push, like the name more or less implies, creates a powerful blast of energy which radiates out from the caster, sending nearby enemies sprawling. It's useful when greatly outnumbered. Higher levels of the spell create more damaging force. As it implies, you cast Force Push, it basically just makes a big old fucking earthquake wave around you that sends everybody flying. And when I say everybody, I mean everybody flying. It doesn't matter if they're a good guy or a bad guy. If they are within your vicinity, you just hurt an innocent civilian and the guards are after you, and you just broke some windows and doors, and yeah. Anyways, Force Push is a force to be reckoned with. That is something that cannot be ignored here. You can and will damage people, civilians, traders, guards, doors, houses, buildings, windows, that sort of thing. But where this spell really shines is not only for crowd control when you're dealing with multiple enemies, but the main reason why I really like Force Push is for reasons of combat multipliers. Now, Force Push happens to be the best spell for obtaining combat multipliers, which means that it's a really, really good spell for getting a lot of fucking experience in any category of experience, as you know, all of your experience is obviously affected by your combat multiplier. Now, Force Push not only stacks your combat multiplier extremely fast when compared to other methods, but Force Push will also stack your combat multiplier when used against corpses on the ground. So every time you kill an enemy, if you keep using Force Push on the dead body, you will continue to get combat multiplier, and this will continue until the dead body disappears. So if used and timed right, you can get massive, massive amounts of combat multiplier from just a small number of weak enemies. And for this reason, I give it S tier, just because it is such a broken and exploitable spell, which makes it extremely, extremely useful for any playthrough. Next on the list is Slow Time. Slow Time is obviously extremely self-explanatory. It affects the very fabric of time itself, slowing everything around the hero to a crawl while leaving the caster immune. So basically, it slows everybody except for you down. I don't really know how much explanation this needs, but it's a really, 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 really broken spell. Once you get Slow Time at its maximum level, time is pretty much literally standing still. You can walk through an entire area without enemies even like recognizing that you were there at all. It's so fucking broken. Like if you have Slow Time, you pretty much don't need to fight anything in this entire game. But with that being said, with Slow Time, you can fucking absolutely decimate any single enemy that ever existed, because it just allows you to get a fucking insane amount of hits in what in their reality is no time at all, but for you it's just, you know, a normal amount of time. For them, they're, you know, 2 seconds pass for them and you just fucking hit them with 10-15 strikes with your sword and a couple spells, and they just don't even know what happened. But yeah, as you can see here, it makes things like trolls and other boss enemies just a piece of cake walk in the park to fight. So yeah, for that reason, I throw that bad boy up in S tier, because it's just such a good spell, and it's just one of those spells that every single playthrough, I'm always using that spell. I use Slow Time and Physical Shield, like those are my two main spells. I will keep those two like right next to each other, get them both going, and boom, there's nothing that can stop you. Next on the list is Turncoat, which is an evil spell, which means that you will not be able to maximize Turncoat unless you are a certain amount of evil. Doesn't really matter though, because it's kind of a shitty fucking spell. Why would you even want level 4 Turncoat? It's fucking such a bad spell. It's not the worst spell in the world, which is why I put it in C tier, not D tier. It's a bad spell, don't get me wrong, but like it's still useful, you know, I guess. You can turn other enemies against other enemies and they'll like fight for you for a second, which is kind of cool. I mean, it has like a similar effect to like summon or ghost swords in that nature. But with the main caveat that as soon as its effects wear off, you have an enemy that is turning on you now, and now you have to worry about a new enemy that wasn't an enemy 10 seconds ago. So it's kind of a weird one. I mean, again, it's not completely useless. I mean, it works, I guess. I don't know, man. It's just not that good of a spell. And then also, at low levels, it takes like fucking 10 seconds to cast. When I first used the spell, like I legit thought it just wasn't working, but it just turns out I had to hold it down longer. At level 3, it's not that bad. At level 3, it actually kind of casts pretty quickly. You don't have to wait too long before it controls the mind of your enemy. So I would imagine level 4 is even better in that regard. But it's just such a slow moving and working spell at low levels that it's just kind of fucking useless. So anyways, C tier. It's a pretty bad spell, but like you can still do something with it, I guess. Next on the list is Drain Life. Again, it's an evil spell, so you will not be able to master it unless you are evil. But again, it is such a terrible spell that why would you want to master it? Fucking leave that shit at level 1. Better yet, leave that shit at level 0. It's not a good spell. It's a pretty self-explanatory one again. Drain Life allows the caster to heal himself by sapping life force from his enemies. But it's just, there's so many spells that are better than Drain Life that it's like, why are you using Drain Life? So it's like, again, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, the caster is using it to heal himself. Okay, but like, what about potions? And what about heal life? And then even more importantly, what about physical shield? Like, if you're going to be using your magic as a means to recover your health, you first of all might as well just use a fucking health potion so that you're not wasting your mana. And second of all, you might as well just use physical shields so that you only have to worry about 1 bar. But anyways, that aside, Drain Life is just such a weak spell that it's not really worth fucking using. Like, at its max level, it's like, why would you even maximize it? Because it's, even at its max level, it's really only good against low level enemies, because the amount of life that it drains is so low, it's not enough to really like kill an enemy or anything. So it's just, I don't know, it's a pretty useless spell. So it gets the spot of D tier, which is yeah, you know. And then, of course, last but not least, we have Summon, which we did already cover, but, you know, it's here, so we might as well. And Summon is a good spell, which means that you will have to be a master of goodness to be a master of Summon. It's a pretty self-explanatory one again. It wrenches a creature's soul from the netherworld to help the caster. If this creature kills another, it is replaced by the soul of the newly fallen creature. Higher levels allow the caster to keep the creature for longer. So yes, as it implies, you start with the weakest enemy. You start with a Wasp Summon, which, to link it back to our S tier classification here, the Wasp Summon is the first summon that you want to keep if you intend to get the Sword of Aeons early. The Wasp Summon is pretty much the only way to do it that I know of, actually. But that being said, obviously, your Wasp kills something stronger than a Wasp. The summon gets replaced by that thing. So if your Wasp kills a Hob, you will summon a Hob. And this works all the way up to the strongest enemies in the game, not including boss monsters. So you can use this to summon minions, you can use this to summon even white Balverines. And it's actually, on its own, it's actually a pretty decently useful spell if you get one of the stronger summons going. And for that reason alone, Summon is a pretty goddamn good spell, but, you know, obviously it's an S tier when combined with Assassin Rush for the sake of glitching. Alright, next on the list is Lightning, because I realized just now that I forgot Lightning somehow. It's a pretty self-explanatory one, if you ask me. Lightning creates an arc of pure energy which leaps from the fingertips of the caster to the target. Higher levels deal more damage and strike more than one foe at a time. Again, pretty self-explanatory, but the main thing I like about Lightning is not only the fact that it will arc to multiple enemies when you're a higher level, which is pretty useful for, you know, medium-sized crowd control, but the main thing that I enjoy about Lightning is that it also has the ability to cancel animation frames of your enemies. Not only this, but Lightning is immune to the animation frames of the caster. Now you might be wondering what the fuck that even means, and what this means is that you can cast Lightning while you use emoticon. So you can dance while you cast Lightning. If you get knocked over by an enemy's attack, you can continue to cast Lightning while you are being knocked over and while you're on the ground. It is an extremely useful spell for those reasons, and then also, because it cancels the attack animations of enemies, it means you can just kind of sit there and hold your enemies in limbo while they just slowly have their health drained by a lightning bolt. And you actually see me do this in my Magic playthrough series. It's actually really funny. I end up cucking Whisper pretty bad with this shit. It's a pretty funny one. So yeah, you should definitely check some of that stuff out, because I tackle a lot of this spell content in greater depth in that whole series. So it's just worth checking out in general to see what more of these spells are all about and the ways that I like to use them. But anyways, Lightning, for that reason, ends up in A tier, because it's such a good broken spell, but it's not S tier because it's just like, it's not one of those spells that I'm like destined to use in every playthrough or anything. It's a really good spell, you know, it's just not the best spell. Alright, so that is the official tier list for the spells in Fable The Lost Chapters / Fable Anniversary. Again, this is kind of just my personal opinion. That being said, I do think it is a pretty accurate personal opinion. I think this is a pretty spot-on ranking of all the spells in Fable, but let me know what you guys think. If you guys have a different opinion on this, feel free to make your own spell tier list and maybe we can do some comparisons or something. Currently, it doesn't really seem like there's too much community rank going on here. There's not enough rankings to create a community average, so if you guys are feeling like it, you guys can create your own rankings for the Fable spells, and we can see what the community ranking is for these, because I'm actually kind of interested to see what the general public thinks about the spells in Fable, and which ones are good, which ones are bad, that sort of thing. So anyways, let me know what you guys think. Maybe I ranked some of these too high, or some of them too low, or I maybe missed some special nuances of some of the ones I ranked low, or anything like that. Feel free to let me know. Feel free to make your own spell tier list and all that stuff. And yeah, just leave that stuff down in the comments, I guess. But yeah, anyways, that's it for the Fable spells tier list. If you guys enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like. It definitely helps me out. And if you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed to this channel if you want to check out any more of this content, or any of my other gaming content for that matter. And of course, for as little as 99 cents a month, you can become a channel member, help support this channel monetarily, help me pay some bills around here, that sort of thing. Yeah, with that being said, this has been Plock the Master Gamer with some Fable Anniversary / Fable The Lost Chapters, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.